So like I said, this is a great course. Great course. This is about the third or fourth time I've taught it. And the reason I like the course is because it brings together from a risk perspective, really everything that you've taken throughout your degree program. Hence, that's why they call it a capstone. Um, and it gives me as an instructor an opportunity to bring together pieces that really doesn't get taught well in schools. Risk. Everything we do in security, cybersecurity, it's based on risk. And if not understand if and not having a good background in risk, sometimes we become too techy. Um, I think I may have this in another one of my weekly videos, but to explain the difference between cybersecurity and network security. They sound very similar, but they're really fundamentally two different things. Your DT guy, your IT departments who do a lot of things with respect to network security is about protecting network architecture, network infrastructure, um, the connectivity on your network, and how maintaining security on servers and routers and all those things. Cybersecurity, we're concerned about the information. So that's why we have a lot of controls that are technical, yes, but really, if you open up any um, control set, such as NIST 853 or ISO 27001, there are more administrative controls than technical controls of understanding how to protect information. So that's why I love this class because the this whole class is a risk assessment. That is the heart of this class is you're doing a risk assessment. One of the first fears I always have to take away from all the students is don't worry about passing this class. You will pass the class. The class is set up in a way, if you do the work week by week by week, getting a good passing grade, please take that off the table. Because my objective is really for you to really understand and grasp what this course is about and provide a product to a company that you're going to select that will actually do them some good. Also, remember for this course, you're not doing this course for me. So it's like I know many times students ask, "Well, Mr. Wallington, what do you want to see?" I say, "Well, this is not about me. This is you going out finding a company and you're going to do a risk assessment on that company. So really, you're doing this for the CIO or the business owner. That's what this project is geared to. It's not geared toward me as an instructor that you want to turn in a nice, pretty report. I could care less about that. It's that you could provide a product to a business owner and give them some recommendations on how to reduce risk and how to evaluate risk within their organization with protecting their critical information. So with that said, so when we look at this course from an agenda perspective, like most CBU courses, pretty much the same thing. Um, the difference with this one, like I said, there's a weekly 30-minute Zoom session that I will have with each student. Like I say, most students have already came in and got their 30-minute time slot. Now, this 30-minute time slot is for just for you and I to go through wherever you are in that week. If you need help with areas, if there's um, things I need to look to go to over with you, it is your personal time. This is the only group setting that I do is on the first week of the class. After this, it'll be individual. The week 1 through week 7, it's about security risk assessment. And we're going to walk through how to be successful in this risk assessment. Discussions and posts, yes, like I say, the initial posts, and be sure to respond to your classmates in these posts. One of the things you're going to have to do is set up to meet with your CBU Career Center. Now, here's what I will say. Many times, as students, the feedback I've gotten, sometimes it's very difficult to get an appointment, and sometimes the openings they have is after the course is over. If that's the case, don't worry about it because all of these things are very low hanging fruit with respect to this course. So if you can't get um, appointment with your career advisor, not a problem. I will sit with you and go through some career things as well. The critical assignment is the final report. As with any capstone, this is a final report and a security presentation, a PowerPoint brief is part of this. We're going to go into this a little bit deeper later on. But what I really want to talk about is, I'm telling you, if you take nothing away from your cybersecurity experience, is understanding risk. Because in my opinion, this is just my opinion, And then from working in the industry for a lot of years, we have made cybersecurity a little bit too techy. What else? Jalen, how you doing, Jalen? I don't know if you got a speaker or camera, video available or not. Somebody just joined in, waiting for them to pop up. Jalen, are you there? Oh well. But anyway, so and you may think, well, are you kidding? I mean, all this stuff we hear about cybersecurity, and you tell us we're too techy? Yes, yes, I am, because we've lost sight of what's core to security is being able to protect something that's of value. From the first time the first caveman had a stick, and he went out and killed a brontosaurus and drug it back into his cave, and another caveman saw that stick, and he said, "You know what? I want that stick because I see the value in that stick." So now the first caveman has, well, I got to figure out how to protect my stick. Nothing has changed in the heart of man since that first episode of someone wanting something. Only thing that has changed is the techniques, but the heart of man hadn't changed from the beginning of time, from Cain, Abel. You know, you pick. Oh, let's try it again. Let's see if I can get Jalen in. There we go, Jalen. Are you there? All right. So,
Yes,
all right. Welcome. How you doing this evening?
I'm good. And yourself?
Good, good. Yeah, we just got started, but not a problem because I'm recording this and we'll send the PowerPoints and everything out. I'll make them available to the class as well. So anything you may have missed, which isn't that much at the beginning, just kind of went over some of my expectations early, but we're going to cover some of those in more detail. So what we're talking about now is risk. Risk, the likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability and the corresponding business impacts. Guys, that is what security is all about. Whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's physical security, whether it's network security, whether it's securing your home or securing your automobile or anything that you have. What is the likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability, and what is the corresponding business impact? So when we look at that, boil that down to what? A vulnerability encounters a threat and there's some impact. So what we do from a cybersecurity perspective, we monitor and assess risk on information, not so much the network, information based on three factors: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And I guarantee all you guys out there going, wait a minute. We heard this the first class I had at CBU. They went over CIA. And I will tell you, this is the core. Pick up any certification book, Security Plus, CISM, CISM. What is the first unit you're going to cover? Risk, CI. And most of us blow right by it. But understanding the confidentiality, integrity, availability to the information, that's what separates cybersecurity from network security. Network security, yes, I'm trying to protect my network. Cybersecurity, I'm trying to protect my information that resides on that network. Big difference. So when you're doing a risk assessment, if you think about the term risk assessment, now you are assessing the risk to information based on these three factors: confidentiality, integrity, availability. So every week that we go through this, I'm going to just drill this into your head so much until you're going to get sick of it. You're going to just puke CIA on your shoes. But it's so important because everyone wants to be the techie guy. I want to be the nerd in the work center, and most of us blow right by the most important part. So when we think about this, let's break it down a little bit further. So you have a threat source. That threat source has what? Some type of characteristics. What is the intent? Something, there's the intent of their heart. Like Genesis chapter 6. Where the intent of man's hearts was continually wicked and evil forever. So that's what the threat source is, and nothing has changed in the heart of man. So that threat source initiates what? A threat event, meaning just a perfect example. This weekend, Saturday, we have a peach tree in our front yard, and we look, and our Ring cameras go off, and we look out there, and here's a guy stealing peaches off of our tree, and we're just like, is he actually out there in our yard? filling his shirt up with peaches. So he was a threat source. And his intent, well, he wanted our peaches. So he created a threat event. Now, what was the likelihood of that initiation? Very high because he was actually doing it. What was the likelihood? He probably drove him by several times looking at the peaches and didn't do it. That's when we talk about likelihood. Now, because of the likelihood, there was a sequence of actions. He jumped out of his truck, he ran over and actually went through our peach tree and pulled peaches off the tree. Now, what were the exploits? Well, what's the vulnerabilities? Well, one, our tree was vulnerable. It was sitting out there. We don't have a fence around it because we just kind of loving, trusting people, thinking that nobody will walk into your yard and steal your fruit. But they do. But that was a vulnerability that was exploited during this threat event by a threat source. And so what was the likelihood of success? Very high. Why? Because we don't have a fence up. What was the severity? In this case, nothing really bad. It's just the fact that you feel a little invaded, your privacy invaded when you look out and somebody's in your yard doing something. But it's just peaches. So, at the end of the day, not that bad. And what would it cause? Adverse impact. What's the impact? Well, one, my wife was pretty nervous because most spouses, you don't feel comfortable that somebody have invaded your privacy. And what did that produce in our house? Risk. So now we have risk that we're thinking now, do we need to build a fence around our side yard to protect, to reduce the likelihood of a threat source creating a threat event that will exploit a vulnerability? You may say, well, why is this so important? Well, I'm going to come back to that. Here's why. To be successful in cybersecurity, we have to be translators. Here's what I mean. We have to learn to speak the right language. Like I say, cybersecurity, what do we speak? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. We speak security controls. We speak all these techie things that when I walk into my program manager's office, who speaks a completely different language. A business owner, they speak cost, schedule, performance. If you start talking about, well, I think your domain controller is probably not protected well because your net apps should be really protected with these different types of security things, you've just lost the person who's paying your bill. And that's why organizations hate security because they don't understand this. They don't understand this. We are trying to talk CIA when program managers and CIOs talk cost, schedule, performance. This is very critical. Please don't forget this with respect to your project. When you find an organization that you're going to go to, remember they don't speak our language. So if you're going to walk in and start talking about Nessus scans and SCAP and all these other things that we do within the realm of cybersecurity, you've just lost them. You have to be able to speak the language of business, the business that they do, and then we translate that into security controls. If you're talking to techie people like engineers in an organization, they speak a completely different language. They speak, I have a problem, here's a hypothesis, and here's the results. This is how we resolve it. You start talking to them about confidentiality, integrity, availability, you've blown right by them. And that's why many times we're so ineffective from cybersecurity because we don't learn to speak the right language. So to be effective, when you leave CBU and you're looking for a job, looking for these opportunities, you got to learn to speak the right language. If from a resume perspective, I would say have at least two or three resumes that are targeted to what industry or what audience and learn to speak the language of. For instance, if you're going to work, if you desire to work in defense industry or with the government, there's a language we speak. And if I'm interviewing, I'm listening for keywords like RMF, Risk Management Framework. Once I hear that, that tells me, okay, you've got a little bit of experience in NIST 853 and these things. If you go into, if you're looking at the banking industry, the same thing. There's a language that the banking industry speaks, PCI DSS, credit card. So understanding how to translate languages, understanding the business that you're going to. Now, as a translator, now we have to be able to translate risk associated with operational needs into risk that can be mitigated with security controls. I would equate that to if you needed a new roof on your house and you're not a roofer, and they start telling you about, well, this is, your house has a 912 pitch with a rise over run at this, and you're going to need 30-year shingles that with a grain rate of yada yada yada. They've just lost you. You're like, well, great. That sounds awesome. How much is this going to cost? So, and that's what we do in security. Understand this is what this is the product that this customer makes. This is what they build. They make garage doors. What they want to know is how can you help me improve my output? How can you help me with cost, schedule, and performance using security? We translate that. And many times it's cost avoidance. Now, for most companies, security, we don't make them one nickel. We provide cost avoidance. So understand that when you go into the organization, the business that you're going to select, that you're going in with that perspective. You're going in behind the power curve already. You're gonna you're gonna get that feeling like when somebody comes to your door and they're trying to sell you ADT, right? Yeah, those door to door. Hey, yeah, we're gonna sell you a new security alarm, and you're gonna go, well, I don't really need a new security alarm. That's how people view us as from a side, and this is in the industry. So it's not just this project. Expect this in the industry. If they could get around, especially in the federal government and in the DoD, if they could get around certain federal policies like FISMA, cybersecurity would not have a job. They would love to get rid of us because to them we are an impediment. We are that roadblock. We're the speed bump. Because the reason I can't sell stuff to the government fast and get my money is because security says I got to have all of these controls in place. That's how we're viewed many times in industry, but that's okay. So hopefully you have a thick skin if you're going to work in this business because sometimes we're not the most loved people in an organization. So now that we understand risk, what do we do? How do we mitigate this risk? Things you can do to risk, you can avoid it, eliminate the cost, avoid it altogether. Let's say that if you have a car and you're concerned about hail damage. I know here in Texas, we get hail damage. Well, how can I avoid that risk? Pretty simple. Sell the car. Boom, there we go. We've just avoided the risk of hail damage on my car. Let's say that's not an option. What's my next option? Well, we do what most all of us do. We transfer it. We buy insurance. So now I've transferred my risks to USAA or State Farm or Allstate. Or like I do with my old vehicles, we accept it. You know what? We're just going to park out here and pray to God that we don't have a big hailstorm. Or what we really do in cybersecurity, we try to mitigate that risk. How do I mitigate it? Well, I can get a carport, park my car in a garage. Those types of things. And now I've mitigated my risk. I've reduced the risk to an acceptable level. So as you're looking at your organization, your business structures, that's what we're looking at. You're going to help them through a risk assessment, how to mitigate risk to an acceptable level. Uh, I'm not going to cover it. Let's see. Yeah, well. So when we talk about mitigating risk, yeah, we'll cover that. Like I say, everything is built around vulnerabilities, whether it's and there's always vulnerabilities. So let's say I have your customer has a information system. Your risk assessment is going to identify what those vulnerabilities are. You can also let them know because of these vulnerabilities, these are the threats that are out there, whether external threats, vandalism, whatever it may be. And then you're going to give them recommendation or security controls to mitigate those um, the likelihood of these threats exploiting those vulnerabilities. That's really what when we're talking about findings, discussion, recommendation. That's what we're doing. Now, as we know that you'll never cover all of the risks, so you can always have what we call residual risk, and those are the things that now what am I going to do with this residual risk? I can accept it, or I'll do a cost benefit analysis and say, well, how much more would it cost me to mitigate that risk. And many times the cost is higher than the asset that we're trying to protect. Now, kind of switch gears here a little bit and get a little techie, just a little bit, not too much. So you're going to go out and you're going to find an industry, a company, a business, and you're going to ask them if you can do a risk assessment on their company, on their information system. How do you approach that? Now, one of the things that I always like to use this little model, what I call defense in depth. There's many terms for security in depth, zero trust models, but start here, right here. Most people want to jump right in the middle of all the techie stuff, the servers and the routers and switches and all of these things. No, no, no. Wrong end. Start at what I call the golden egg. Where is their critical information? What are you really trying to protect? Many times that's very difficult for an organization to understand. What is critical? What is the critical information? Meaning that your business, let's say that you had a business making candles and because a lot of people make candles, but you make these candles with you got a special recipe to come up with these fragrances and essential oils for making these candles. Well, that's what's critical to your business. Not so much the wax, not so much all these other things, but it's that special formula that you got. So when you go into a business, help them to see, okay, what's important? Because many times we're spending a lot of money protecting things that are not important. So once you find their critical data and once you define what that is, and now you can start working back from that because that critical data is probably in some files or in folders that's on a server, and that server is connected to some type of networking device, whether it's an access switch or whether it's a core switch router with a firewall. And from there, that's where a user, individuals in that organization, now they have the ability to get to that information through all of these protected means. So now you start seeing how I can start walking this thing backwards. Because if I'm an authorized user, I should be accessed through that core switch router based on firewall rules or access control list. And then they may or may not have VLAN set up that provide additional network distribution to get to that server. Now, when I get to this server, I should have the right type of permissions, accounts, whether they're privileged accounts or unprivileged accounts, so that now I'm access to get to this data, and this data now may be access control with discretionary access controls or role-based access controls. So looking at your organization, your business from this kind of a model helps you to start dissecting or segmenting their network. So now you can start looking at opportunities of where are risks, where do risks reside in this model. There may be risk associated with the firewalls. There may be risk from permissions, physical risk. Are these network devices protected physically, as well as administratively? Because at the end of the day, what we don't want is unauthorized individuals to be able to get to our critical data through any of these network or information system paths. So as you go into your business that you're going to select, start thinking of the data from that perspective, from a layered perspective. And it helps you not to try to eat the elephant whole. Now, what you're going to probably see, you go into your organization, and they may have outsourced the maintenance of all of these network components. That may be a third party organization. Does that mean that, well, I don't have any risk anymore because I've outsourced this? Or this could be all in the cloud. This could be all cloud services. Now, what I'm expecting is, okay, if it says that they are cloud, now we need to look at it from a cloud perspective. What are the risks associated with your information system based on cloud? And now because that drives cost. That also drives things like service level agreements, meaning how quickly am I able to get things resolved, and when I don't own it, what is the contract looks like that between the cloud service provider and the company that you're working with. Are they able to get their data back out of the cloud? What's the response time of the third party maintenance organization or IT organization that's maintaining that backbone? So that'll drive you down a different set of questions when we start looking at how to looking for findings, recommendations, and discussions. Just a model, the way to think about how to break apart a network. I use this all the time. And like I said, I work for a company, Raytheon. one of the world's largest defense contractors for the United States and other countries. But even still, something as simple as this model, when I go into a new organization or a new step, a new network, that's how I start. I don't start at layer one and work right to left. I start at the information and work left to right because many times we don't understand what we're trying to protect. Okay, so when we look at this class, we're kind of from a weekly flow. Like I say, so really you got 7 weeks starting this week. The eighth week, you should be wrapping everything up and getting everything submitted. So, week one, uh, you're going to just cover risk assessment basics. Week two, you're going to get into some project management skills, how to define your project, how to prepare and get ready for it. Week three is a very important week because now you're going to start talking about data gathering. How do you actually start gathering data after you have found, the business that you want to go into? And talking about data, how do you collect technical data or physical data and start through that risk analysis process in week four and five. Then in week six, that's when now you should have collected the data you need. Now, when you're going to actually start putting together your report, building the assessment, um, and finishing out the project from through each of the 7 weeks. So this is just kind of give you an idea of what the workflow I would say should look like with from week to week. First thing you want to do is select a company. Couple of things to consider. Don't try to go for a large company. Trust me. If you say, "Well, I'm going to go do a risk assessment on Walmart," well, that you're going to be unsuccessful. That's too big. One, Walmart is not going to probably, if you walk up and, hey, look, yeah, I'm a student at California Baptist University and I'm working on my capstone and I want to do a risk assessment on your company. So I need to get access to your network, your firewalls, your information, and they're going to look at you like you're crazy. So don't try to go with a large company. Um, Small is better. What I would recommend, like I say, let's say if you have a mom and pop restaurant or you have a family member who owns a business, a dry cleaner, so where you take get your dry. If you look at the services that you have in your life in your circle, focus on some of those small business, little small restaurants or tax firms, things like that, something small. That way, it's going to make it much easier for you to get your arms around this project. Here again, because we only have 7 weeks, and these weeks go by really quickly. So, uh, and expectation management. Please don't expect to do a full 100% assessment on their entire information system or all of their data. No, you got to be able to scope the level of effort. Otherwise, again, you're going to get stuck and you're going to get frustrated. So that's why we'll work with you week by week by week. Just kind of show me where you're at, what you're going to do. So this week, looking for a business to select, and you may get turned down a few times, but it's okay. But yeah, so just got selecting the right business and scoping that to we're not trying to solve world hunger. So if you can just come up with 3 or 4 recommendations, wow, that's awesome. Um, the other thing to remember, I run into this a lot from class to class. Your objective is not to fix anything. We're just giving risk recommendations. This is an assessment to make that I looked at your organization. Here's some things that I saw. Here's some improvements I think you can make with respect to your security posture to reduce your security attack surface and to be successful. That's all. Like I say, please don't overscope this. One of the things you want to do, I think, and it kind of goes back to the slide I was talking about being an interpreter, is to understand the business mission. If you're going to go in there and, hey, I'm the sharpest tech guy in the world, you're not going to be that successful. Start with what does this business do? Like I say, if they're a restaurant, they're there to provide customers service and food. Now that you understand their business, now look at how their information systems fit around that. Because now you can have a conversation with the business owner or with their IT department or whomever they set you up with, and it's going to flow much better for you. Like I say, we talked about becoming an interpreter. Learn how to understand their business model. How do they make money? What type schedules? What type of performance do they expect from their information system? That we're going to help you so much in putting security controls around that information system. After you select the company, then you're going to do your risk assessment. And what I'm walking through really is the critical assignment template. but I want to kind of break this out. So risk assessment methodology. Now this is actually really kind of chapter 14 of the textbook. There are many different risk assessment methodologies. You can use the NIST 800 30 guidance. Octave is another system. What I recommend to keep it simple. Here again, guys, don't try to impress us with a lot of stuff. I'd rather see you do simple good than try to do complex crappy. So I recommend using the RIOT method, RIIOT. That is right in the textbook. I think chapter 5, chapter 6 talks about RIOT as far as data gathering and how you're able to then use a qualitative or semi-quantitative method of assessing your risk. By all means, you pick whichever, method you want, definitely, or a combination of multiple. You may say there's things within NIST 853 or Octave or the cybersecurity framework, the CSF, that you can pull those pieces together, but don't overthink it. Please don't overthink this piece. Next thing that you're going to do now is really going to go into your pre-assessment. There's three phases. There's a pre-assessment, on-site, and then post-assessment. Chapter 4 gives you some good things in there to think about with the pre-assessment. Your pre-assessment, really all you're doing is developing a game plan before you actually hit the ground. You're going to reach out, make initial contact, but you want to have a pre-assessment game plan that says, okay, who are you going to talk to in this organization? Find out who you're going to work with in the organization. What questions to ask, and who are you going to ask those questions of? Kind of have those things pre-scripted that I want to understand. I would like to get this type of information. Kind of a network, what your network look like, your network model, network design diagram, and now I can start looking at your business plan, business model, and critical information. So that you've put some thought into asking those questions. That's the pre-assessment. Then when you get on site, now you can start your data gathering. And then really chapter 9 again gives you some good insight on how to collect data, whether it's technical data, administrative data, or physical security data. So now you're able to collect the data. Then the post assessment, this is when you do the actual analysis. So you've gone in, you asked the right questions, you've collected data. Now you can say, okay, now based on threats, vulnerabilities, impacts, what does this data tell me? That I looked at your wireless and found out that your wireless is being um, secured by WEP, which is a very insecure, protocol. And your recommendation would be, okay, because of threats, because of vulnerabilities, here's a vulnerability and threats. Now here's the impacts that could be affected by not having the right wireless or not using a VPN or having passwords, weak passwords, because the data you gather should be able to help you do that assessment, and then your documentation. So what you're going to do is, and these two tie closely together, your post-assessment and as you document. So here's a finding. I got a finding. Your wireless um, infrastructure not secure. Discussion. Now you're going to write, because that finding should be something very short, very succinct. Boom. The discussion piece of that is okay, based on what we saw, that we feel that your password is you have weak passwords and you're using a unsecure protocol web to protect your wireless infrastructure. And because of this, it threat agents, there are attack vectors out there that will allow individuals to get into your network. Our recommendation now, the third part, recommendation, update to WPA or WPA2 or increase your password policy. And then there you go. And that would be one finding right there. Now, when you look at the model, it tells us, it gives you these different areas: information security, internet security, network security, patching, backup and recovery, physical, wireless security, cybersecurity training, account access, and role access. Those are areas that it looks at. Now, do I expect you to have something in every one of those areas? No, not really, because you may be in an environment where patching, for instance, if they have moved their network into the cloud is taking care of patching. So all you need to do is, if for that section, no findings. I looked at their SLA, and the cloud vendor that they're working with is responsible for take care of patching. Boom, there you go. Same with backup and recovery. There may not be a technical finding, but you may look at, well, especially if it's cloud based, how are you able in your contract If you look at your contract with your cloud provider, how are you able to, what assurity do you have that you can recover your data in a timely manner if there's a catastrophic failure? So that would be a findings discussion and a recommendation. So that is how you just kind of walk through the process, over the course of the next 7 weeks, uh, performing this risk assessment on this company. And here again, we're not fixing anything. We're just saying, "Hey, we found a weakness. We're going to describe that weakness and we're going to give a recommendation of how, and the recommendation needs to be based on, whether, some type of policy or process or procedure, based on these security controls in the NIST 853. We recommend that, that you implement these security controls or in the cybersecurity framework or in the CIS framework. So you can base those recommendations, on some type of valid security control. But yeah, that's how we would walk through that. I'll breathe now for a second. Any questions? Any questions from you guys?
I do have a quick one. So let's say we don't have a finding. Do we go ahead and put in there um, that we did find something good, like this is covered? That's what we found.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Was you're
So,
breaking up?
oh, I'm sorry. So you said if there's no finding, we would say no finding. Would it be okay if we found something and it's like a positive, like, hey, you're covered for this from what
Oh,
we found, and put that
yes.
in there too?
Yes, by all means. A risk assessment doesn't have to be negative. No, a risk assessment, if there's things that, best practice, yeah, yeah, this is a great best practice we saw, continue to do that. Yes, by all means.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. Any other questions or comments? All right. So, and here's some things hopefully to help you to keep you on track a little bit. Um, because again, I am not a stickler for page counts and all these things that I know in a lot of classes. That's you got to hit 25 pages and 30 slides. No, no. I'm more concerned about the quality of the information and that you understand it and it's presentable to the business owner. So as you're working through the critical assignment template, week one, your introduction, please keep that short and to the point. More is not better with me, okay? No more than a page, really about 2 paragraphs at the most for introduction. Please don't ramble. Please don't ramble on it. That you start losing points. I mean, if it's just rambling and you're repeating the same thing. Keep that introduction short. Week two, when you're working through your methodology, again, keep it short and to the point. A couple of paragraphs, one or 2 paragraphs. This is the methodology. This is how I plan to do this. This is what I plan to do. Now, your pre-assessment, you want to spend some time there in this area. That you're asking the right questions. You've put thought into it. That you're looking at what type of standards I'm using. How am I going to approach this based on the methodology. So that if I'm using NIST 853 or 830, that I understand the control sets and I've got a framework that I'm working within, as well as week four with your on-site post-assessment. Yeah, this is where you're going to spend time. This is actually going through that assessment, looking at different areas, and all the areas should not be technical. Look at administrative areas. What type of policies do they have? What type of training do they have? Do they have written procedures? Do they have single points of success or failure? You go into a lot of organizations and, just one person, they know everything. And there's not, those things because now that also starts to looking at is there potential for insider threat when you have the one smart guy and no one else knows what's going on. What's the business relationship with whoever's providing the IT services and who's controlling that contract. Many of the, actually, really, those are the security things where people we get our lunch eaten every day. When you look at exploits today, in most large organizations, they get some type of exploit, whether it's a zero-day attack, um, whatever that exploit, whether it's a phishing attack or whatever it may be. They usually start typically with some type of non-technical um, exploit to get into the network. Usually it's something not a non-technical exploit that opens the door to get people into a network. A phishing attack, spam. So your technical control is important, but understanding how to ask the right questions with respect to administrative controls. How is access is set up? Because many places, one person have all the keys to the kingdom. They got all the passwords. They got everything to themselves. So there's no separation of duties, no least functionality, least privilege haven't been established. So now, so that's why week 3, week 4, that's why you want to spend your some time to be sure that you've allocated time to focus on the pre, on-site, and post-assessment. Going into week 5, now week 5, you should now be looking at how do I start formulating my findings, discussions, and recommendations. Week 5, you're just going to look at kind of these first ones here: information security, internet security, network security, patching, and backup recovery. Again, clearly state the finding. That should not be a paragraph. That should be almost a sentence. Here's the finding. Now, in the discussion part of that, yeah, maybe a paragraph or 2 or 3 sentences explaining in a language that the customer can understand, not so much that I can understand. Don't write it that I hope Mr. Wallington can understand. No, no, you're going to explain this to the customer of a business who runs a restaurant because they're the ones who needs to understand the risk, not me. And then how would an implementable recommendation that yeah, you need to do this, need to do that. Now you got to remember, you don't want to give recommendations that's going to drive a huge dollar bill. That yeah, you need to replace all of your network infrastructure. No, not so much. Or you need to go out and buy this, $50,000 security software program and have network monitoring. You need Splunk running all these things, and they're not going to do that. So risk is always balanced with cost. How much do you think this business is really going to spend on security? So always understand and balance that. Going into week 6 and week 5 are basically laid out the same. It's just splits it up across 2 weeks because the second week you'll look at physical security, wireless, training, account access, role-based access controls. Week 7, you just kind of summary. This week 7, if you do this properly, all you're doing is cleaning up and making administrative updates. Here's what I recommend, guys. Strongly recommend. You take the template, you start the template one time, and every week you just keep adding to the same Word document. And each week, when you submit your assignment for that week, I should see everything from week 1 all the way to whatever week you're in. Please don't submit a separate document each week because that way, when you get to week 7, you've got the same document, and now everything is there. All you got to do is clean it up, do all your APA formatting and all everything you need to do, spell check, grammar, all of those things. So when you get to week 8, now, and really week 8 is where you do your executive summary. Even though the executive summary is at the beginning of the document, week 8 is where you're going to actually, now you can go through and build about a 1-page executive summary, please, not 5, 6 pages. No. So that's your project paper. I know in the rubric it says about 24 pages. I'm not a stickler on pages. More isn't better. So if you captured everything and it comes out to be 18 pages, please don't go back and start putting fluff in there just to get to a 24-page count. No. If you feel that okay, yeah, I can capture what I need to in an 18, 15, 7, I don't care. That's what I'm looking at. Now, probably the most important part of this whole project, believe it or not, at the end of the day is the PowerPoint briefing. What the PowerPoint briefing is now you're going to take your project paper. You're going to congeal it down to about 10 slides, to anywhere 10 to 15, so that now and think of it this way. If the CEO of this company, the owner of this company had 30 minutes on their calendar for you to come in and present this presentation to them, what would you give them? And trust me, I've sat in that chair and I'm not looking at 50 slides, 30 PowerPoint slides. No, you want to keep that thing down to about 10 slides and hit it and be able to explain to them in a risk-based, here's what I went through and these are the findings. Boom, boom, very succinct, to the point, you know, about a slide to cover your methodology, what you looked at, but then when you hit those findings, finding number 1, short bullet and discussion and short bullet recommendation. Boom. Slide. Next finding. Next finding. That's how you want to be able to communicate to an end user, to a customer, to a program manager. So that's what I'm looking for in the PowerPoint. Don't just regurgitate your whole paper in 35 slides. That's you missed the boat. That PowerPoint's got to be. I got 30 minutes on the calendar of this business owner, and I need to hit the what we call elevator speech. I got 3 minutes in the elevator with the CEO. What can I tell him about me in that 2 minutes it takes for the elevator to get to the 10th floor? Same perspective. That's what I'm looking for. Any questions? Any questions on that? Cool. So, like I say, so hopefully I've given you a framework that we can work through. Now, when we have our weekly sessions, you always kind of know where you are in the process. And then if you get stuck somewhere, you don't have to wait to Sunday to reach out. Just reach out to me. Email. Hey, Mr. Wallace, I'm having a problem here, and I can work with you. But yeah, each week. Now, another thing, also, I know time is valuable. If you're in week 2, week 3, week 4, and you know what, it says, hey, look, I feel pretty comfortable. I'm on a good path, good trajectory, and you don't feel like you don't need to meet that week, just let me know and I am okay. And you'll still get the 10 points for the week. Just let me know. Mr. Wallington, I think I'm on a good path. I saw your feedback, that you gave me from here, and I fixed that. And I don't really have anything to discuss this week. We will cancel your 30-minute block and pick it up next week. So very, very liberal from that perspective. All right. Any questions, guys? Awesome. So I got 4 minutes left, and since some of you guys probably didn't make it to church, Sunday school, or to Bible study this week, you know what? I got something for you. That's right, spiritual risk, and we talked about risk from a cybersecurity perspective, but that same model we can apply to our spiritual lives. Spiritual risk, just like the other risk, the likelihood of a threat agent exploiting a vulnerability and the corresponding business impacts. Spiritual risk is the same way. Spiritual risk is the likelihood of temptation, taking advantage of our lust, and the corresponding sin impacts. If you look at our lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, pride of life, what do those things run up against? Temptation. And when temptation, just like it says in what James, when temptation meets our lust, that's when sin comes about. So what are the spiritual impacts? Just like before, with risk management, we would talk about what confidentiality, integrity, availability. For our spiritual risk, we're impacting our relationship with God, with our families, and with others when our lust meets temptation and the corresponding impacts. That's your devotional for the week. All right, guys. If there's no questions, I will sign off. Give you 2 minutes of your evening back. I will take this video, get the video, and I should be recording. Hopefully, it's still recording, and I'll make this available to you guys as well as the rest of the class and the PowerPoint. All right. If nothing else, have a great Monday evening, and I will see you on whatever time I've got you on Sundays. All right.